Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The pain in her shoulder was sharp but distant, like her body belonged to someone else. The crowd had gone silent. Dust floated through the air, glittering in the late afternoon sun like broken glass. Ella blinked through the ache. Her ears rang. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, but from something older, deeper. She rolled onto her side, every joint screaming in protest. But she didn't scream, not in front of them. "You all right?" Silas pushed through the ring of stunned faces. His voice was softer now, the mockery gone. Ella didn't answer. She was staring up at the ridge, but the man in the black coat was gone. Had she imagined him? No, she was sure of it. He was there, watching. She sat up slowly, spitting out blood and dirt. "That was crazy," someone mumbled behind her. "She almost made it. Did you see her face?" "She was smiling," whispered another girl, almost in awe. Her stepfather, Dale, stepped forward. His boots made hollow thuds across the dry ground. "Well," he said too loudly, "that's what happens when little girls play with fire." He smiled down at her, that smug, rehearsed smile that made her skin crawl. "Maybe now you'll learn to keep your mouth shut, Ellie." She hated when he used that nickname. "Don't call me that," she muttered. "What was that?" Dale cupped a hand to his ear. "I said," she snapped, standing despite the burning in her knee. "Don't call me that." A murmur rippled through the group. Dale's eyes narrowed. "You better remember who's feeding you, girl." "You're feeding me lies," she shot back, "like you did to Mom." A collective gasp. Even the horses in the nearby stalls shifted uneasily, as if sensing the storm. Dale took a step forward, his hand twitching at his side, but before he could say anything, Silas stepped between them. "That's enough," he said, voice low and steady. Dale stared at him for a moment, then scoffed. "You think you're some kind of hero, boy?" "No," Silas said, "just someone who's tired of watching you act like you own everything." Ella's breath caught. No one had ever stood up to Dale. Not in public. Not like this. Dale's jaw flexed. But he said nothing. Instead, he turned and walked off, boots crunching on gravel. The rest of the crowd began to disperse, murmuring amongst themselves. Ella swayed slightly, the adrenaline wearing off, leaving only raw pain. Silas caught her arm gently. "Let's get you cleaned up." Inside the barn, the air smelled of hay, sweat, and something else, something old and secret. Silas helped her sit on an overturned bucket while he fetched a first aid kit from the tack room. "You're lucky. You didn't break anything," he said, kneeling beside her. She gave a hollow laugh. "Not the first time I've been thrown." He glanced up at her, eyes searching. "What did you mean out there about your mom?" Ella looked away. She hadn't told anyone. Not in 5 years. Not when her mother died suddenly. Not when Dale moved them into his house 2 weeks later. Not when the papers for the land changed names in the county office. "I found a letter," she whispered, "in the attic a few months ago." Silas stopped dabbing her wound. "It was from my real dad," she continued, voice cracking. "Mom was going to run. She was going to leave Dale. She'd written to him for help." Silas swallowed hard. "What happened?" "She never sent the letter," Ella said. "Or maybe she did, but it never reached him." "Do you think—" Silas hesitated. "Do you think Dale had something to do with her death?" Ella didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said enough. Silas sat back, stunned. "That man on the ridge, could that have been your real dad?" "I don't know," she said, her voice barely audible. "But he looked like me. The eyes, the way he stood. It felt like something finally made sense." She pulled a folded, worn letter from her jacket pocket. "This is all I have." Silas took it carefully, reading the faded ink. "If you get this, please come. I'm scared. He's not who I thought. And Ella, she's not safe." It was signed Gabriel R. Kane. Silas blinked. "Gabriel Kane, isn't that the name of that horse breeder from Montana? The one who disappeared?" Ella nodded. "He was my mother's first love, before she ever met Dale, before she left everything to come here." Silas looked at her, a new weight in his expression. You think he came back? I think he never knew what really happened, Ella said, and now he's watching. Why not come forward? I don't know, she said, wrapping her arms around herself, but I'm going to find out. Silas stood. Then we'll find him. She looked up at him, surprised. He smiled just a little. Someone has to keep you from throwing yourself onto more murder horses. Ella laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks, but deep down a storm had already begun. That night Ella lay in bed, every muscle aching but her mind racing. She stared at the ceiling, running her fingers over the edges of the letter. Then a soft tap on the window. She jumped, another tap. Carefully she moved to the curtain and pulled it back. Outside stood a man in a dark coat, his face hidden in shadow. He held something in his hand. Ella opened the window. He didn't speak, just held up a worn leather journal. Her mother's. Then he was gone. She snatched the journal from the windowsill, her hands shaking. Inside the cover, a note. They lied about everything. Meet me at the edge of Carson's Creek, tomorrow, midnight, GC. The moonlight poured, silver over the winding path to Carson's Creek. Ella moved carefully through the tall grass, boots crunching softly over old dirt, each step more surreal than the last. In her coat pocket, her mother's journal pressed against her chest like a second heartbeat, pages full of secrets that no daughter should have to read. Silas had offered to come, but she told him no. If Gabriel Kane was really her father, if this wasn't all some twisted trick, she needed to face him alone. The creek whispered ahead, threading its way through the hills like a scar left by time. Trees arched over it, weeping into its waters. The moment she reached the edge, her breath caught. He was already there. Gabriel stood tall, hands in his coat pockets, staring into the water. Older than she expected, greyer than the photograph she had once found in her mother's jewelry. Box, but unmistakably him, his profile, his posture, even the tilt of his head, like someone listening for a memory. She stepped forward, gravel shifting underfoot. He turned. His face, when he saw her, was not surprised. You look like her, he said softly. Ella's throat tightened. You're him, he nodded. How long have you known? She asked, voice shaking. I found the letter too late, Gabriel said. It had been buried under a pile of boxes in my Montana ranch, mailed but never delivered. Wrong address. I was supposed to be gone forever. That's what she wanted, was for your safety. But she wanted to reach you, Ella said. She knew Dale would kill her if he found out, he replied. Ella flinched. So it was true. He took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. I came 2 weeks ago, stayed quiet. I didn't want to make it worse. You watched me ride Wrecker, she said, half accusing. I watched you fight, he said, like your mother did, like I should have done for both of you. Silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the soft gurgle of the creek. Gabriel took out a faded envelope and handed it to her. Inside was a will, handwritten and notarized, naming her as the rightful heir to a large piece of Montana land, property Dale had claimed for himself. He forged documents after your mother died, Gabriel said. But I never signed them over. I still hold the deed. Ella's head spun. Why didn't you come forward before? Gabriel looked down. I was ashamed and hunted. You don't cross men like Dale unless you're ready to lose everything. Then why now? He looked up. Because I saw you. The way you stayed on that horse. The way you looked at him after. You're not afraid of him anymore, and neither am I. Ella took a deep breath, feeling the shift, the weight of knowing she wasn't alone anymore. What do we do? She asked. Gabriel hesitated. Then, we burn it all down. The plan came together over the next 2 days. Ella returned to town, her bruises still healing. She told no one where she'd been. Dale hovered near the barn like a vulture. She could feel his eyes on her every second, but she smiled now, polite pleasant, just like her mother had taught her. Only Silas sensed something had changed. "You're walking like someone with a secret," he said, cornering her behind the stables. "I am," she whispered. And then she told him everything. To her surprise, he didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He just nodded. "I'm in." That night, the three of them met again. Silas brought maps. Gabriel brought documents. Ella brought fire, the kind that burns from within. They weren't just going to expose Dale. They were going to dismantle him. Piece by piece. First came the papers. Gabriel submitted the original deed to a contact in the county office, a woman he'd once helped years ago. Quietly, the records began to shift. Dale no longer owned the land. Then came the audio. Ella left her phone recording in the tack room, catching Dale's voice when he bragged to the sheriff about how he'd fixed the problem with her mom, about how Ella was just a girl who wouldn't know the difference. That recording was uploaded to a dozen private drives, just in case. Then came the fire. Not literal. Not yet. Ella entered the annual Harvest Riders event. The same place. Dale had strutted for years as the local hero. She didn't ride Wrecker this time. She rode her mother's old horse, Ginger, the mare that had been hidden in the far stall, forgotten by time, and she rode like thunder. She didn't win, but she didn't need to, because when she dismounted, Gabriel walked onto the field, and the whole town turned. Whispers swept the bleachers like a windstorm. "That's Gabriel Kane." "I thought he was dead." "No, he vanished after Eleanor." "Wait, is that Ella with him?" Dale stood at the edge of the ring, red-faced and frozen. Gabriel stopped 10 feet from him. "You stole from my daughter," he said, loud enough for every ear in the stands to hear. Dale laughed nervously. "Your what?" Gabriel pulled out the papers. "I've filed a civil suit. Forgery, land theft, coercion, abuse, and I have witnesses, testimonies, and a sheriff's confession on tape." Dale's face dropped. Sheriff Nolan tried to slip away from the crowd, but Silas stepped into his path, holding the phone. "We can do this the easy way," Gabriel said, "or we can do it in court." Dale lunged, but he never reached them. The crowd held him back. Even the men who once laughed with him now looked away. In seconds, it was over. Dale was escorted off the field. Not in handcuffs. Not yet. But it was. Coming, the house, the horses, the stolen land. Everything he thought he owned, now under investigation. Ella stood in the arena, the sun lighting her hair like flame, and let the moment burn. She wasn't afraid anymore. Back at the barn, Gabriel knelt by an old trunk Ella had never noticed before. He opened it and pulled out an envelope marked for Ella. It was her mother's handwriting. Hands trembling, Ella opened it. Inside were photos of her as a baby, held in Gabriel's arms, letters she had never seen, a necklace, tiny, gold, with her initials etched on the back, and a note. "If you're reading this, it means the truth found you. I'm so sorry for what I couldn't protect you from, but I see your strength even from beyond. You are mine and his, and you are more than anything they ever called you." Tears fell freely. Gabriel rested a hand on her shoulder. "I should have come sooner," Ella nodded. "But you came now. That's what matters." Silas leaned in the doorway, watching. Ella turned to both of them. "What now?" Gabriel smiled. "Now you reclaim everything they tried to steal." The barn was too quiet. Ella could feel it. The kind of silence that wasn't peace, but warning. Wrecker stood in his stall, head low, as if he sensed something too. The sky outside had turned the color of bruised steel, clouds heavy with secrets. It had been 3 days since Dale had been publicly shamed at the Harvest Riders event. 3 days since the sheriff resigned, citing personal reasons. 3 days since her mother's name was spoken in town with respect, and Dale's with disgust. But Ella knew men like Dale. They didn't just go away. They waited. They watched. They struck when you believed you'd already won, and that's why her heart was pounding now. She met Gabriel and Silas at the old cabin behind the ranch, where they were sorting through the remaining documents, insurance fraud, animal abuse, bribes. Gabriel had lived in shadows long enough to know how to make it all airtight, but today his hands trembled. "Someone's been to the house," he said. "The files were moved, nothing taken, just shifted." "Dale?" Silas asked. Ella shook her head. "He wouldn't be that subtle. If he came, he'd torch the place." Silas looked at them both. "Then who?" That's when it started raining. The town seemed to split in two after the reveal. Some folks, especially the women who had known Ella's mother, rallied around her. They brought food, offered space, and said things like, "Your mama would be proud." But others, they whispered, they rolled their eyes. Men who had once laughed with Dale now grumbled about false accusations and a girl who doesn't know her place. One of them was Ethan Gray, Dale's closest friend and drinking partner. He hadn't spoken at the harvest event. He hadn't shown his face. Now he was everywhere, at the feed store, at the sheriff's office, outside Ella's window. That night, Gabriel stayed up late going through old photos. Ella sat beside him, her mother's journal open in her lap. There were entries she hadn't seen before. They were darker, full of fear and coded language. One line stood out: "If anything happens to me, it won't be Dale. It'll be the one who watches quietly, the one who smiles with dead eyes." Ella froze. "Who?" Gabriel asked. She swallowed hard. "Ethan." Gabriel's jaw clenched. "We were all looking at the wrong man." By morning, Silas was gone. Ella found his phone on the hay bales behind the barn. A smear of blood on the ground, boot prints in the mud, dragging marks leading toward the woods. She screamed for Gabriel, and together they followed the trail. Half an hour later, they found his hat, but no Silas. Gabriel gripped her shoulder. "We need to go to the police." Ella's voice was hollow. "We are the police now." And then her phone buzzed. One message. No sender ID, a photo. Silas, bound and gagged, tied to a chair in a horse trailer. Behind him, a wall Ella recognized. The old slaughterhouse on Greystone Ridge. The text read, "Bring the deed, or dig his grave." Gabriel wanted to go alone. Ella refused. "This is my fight," she said. "He came after my people." Gabriel gave her a hard look. "If something happens to you," she touched his arm. "You found me too late to save. Me as a child. But not now. Now I save myself." Together they made the drive to Greystone Ridge. Rain battered the windshield. Thunder cracked like gunshots. The building loomed like a monster. Long abandoned, rusted, windows broken like jagged teeth. Inside, shadows danced across the walls. Ethan stepped forward. He was smiling, but his eyes were hollow. "I always said Dale was too soft," he said. "He hit her, sure. But me, I made her disappear." Ella's blood turned cold. Gabriel stepped forward. "Where's Silas?" Ethan laughed. "You think you can just waltz back in after 20 years and take everything back? This land, this town, it belongs to people like me." "No," Ella said. "It belongs to the ones who bled for it." Ethan's grin widened. "You first." He raised the shotgun, but he didn't pull the trigger because behind him something moved. A blur of motion, hooves on concrete, wrecker charging, Silas riding, bruised but alive, with rage in his eyes. He'd escaped just long enough to break into the barn and bring help. The horse slammed into Ethan like a freight train, sending him flying. The shotgun clattered to the floor. Ella grabbed it. Silas dismounted, coughing, bleeding from the lip. "I told you," he said. And Gabriel pulled out the last piece, a camera already recording. "You just confessed to murder," he told Ethan. "On tape." Police sirens wailed in the distance. This time they would come, because this time the town had heard enough. It all came undone fast after that. Ethan was arrested. Dale tried to flee, but Gabriel had already filed federal charges. The property was seized, the land restored, And the barn, Ella renamed it Eleanor's Grace. She didn't make it a show barn. She made it a place for girls who had nowhere else to go. The bruised, the broken, the ones who had been laughed at, pushed, silenced. She taught them to ride, to fight, to survive, to heal. Rekka stood by her side every day, no longer wild but never tamed, just like her. One morning, months later, Ella stood in front of her mother's grave, Gabriel beside her. Silas a few feet away, fixing the gate. The wind carried the scent of earth and freedom. Ella placed the necklace, the one from her mother's envelope, onto the headstone. "I did it," she whispered. "You can rest now." Gabriel wiped. "A tear, and I can breathe again." Silas approached. "So, what's next?" Ella looked at them both. "Now we build something that no man can steal again." And behind her, from the open field, the thundering sound of young girls riding filled the air. The sunrise stretched its golden arms across Eleanor's Grace, casting long shadows of the rebuilt stables and the girls now calling it home. Ella stood by the fence line, eyes closed, letting the wind press against her face. The nightmare was over. Ethan, sentenced to life without parole for the murder of her mother and attempted murder of Silas. Dale, arrested on federal charges of land, fraud, domestic abuse, and conspiracy. He'd tried to run, but Gabriel had tracked him to a trailer park 3 states away. Her mother had died in silence, but now justice had a voice. And Ella. She wasn't just the girl forced onto a wild horse anymore. She was the storm that followed. 1 month later, Ella stared at the folded paper in her hand. It had arrived unannounced. No sender, just her name. Inside, an invitation. "You are hereby invited to the Founders' Council of Harvest County, a seat your mother once refused, a seat that is rightfully yours." Beneath it, signatures, powerful names, people who had never acknowledged her existence. Silas scoffed. "Now they want you at their table." Gabriel looked pained. "They think it's over, that if they make a gesture it all goes away." Ella nodded slowly. "Then let's make it unforgettable." At the council meeting, the room smelled like oak and old money. Men in tailored suits and women in pearls turned to stare as Ella walked in. She wore no makeup, just boots caked with real mud and a denim jacket with her mother's initials embroidered. On the back, silence. Then Judge Henley cleared his throat. "We offer this seat as a symbol of peace. What happened to your mother was tragic. We deeply regret." Ella raised a hand. "I'm not here for regret." The room stiffened. "I'm here to remind you that what you allowed nearly destroyed a generation of girls. You knew about Dale. You knew about Ethan, and you turned away. You let them own this land, these laws, these lives." A murmur rose. Ella stepped forward. "But here's what you didn't know. You didn't know that one girl, one broken, kicked, humiliated girl, would survive it. You didn't know she'd come back, stronger, with evidence, with truth." She placed a file on the mahogany table. "Inside is everything you need to see. Police reports, video, testimonies. I'm giving you this, not to ask for a seat." She paused. "But to warn you, if even one more girl goes missing, gets hurt, gets silenced, I will burn this entire council to ash." Gasps. A slow, steady clap echoed from the corner. It was Miriam Thomas, the town's first black female lawyer, retired but respected. "She reminds me of her mother," Miriam said proudly. "About time someone scared you all straight." Ella nodded once, then turned and walked out. She never looked back. 2 months later, the first reclamation rodeo was born. But it wasn't about buckles and beer anymore. It was about stories, survivors, healing. Girls rode blindfolded to show they'd mastered their fear. They gave speeches, danced barefoot on the arena sand, read letters they'd written to their past selves, and at the heart of it all, Ella, not as a leader, But as one of them, Gabriel handled security. Silas trained the new riders. Even Sheriff Diaz, newly elected and actually honest, volunteered to stand watch. By noon, nearly 300 people had gathered, including press. Ella stood, backstage, heart racing. "You ready?" Silas asked. She looked out at the crowd, then at Rekka, now older, scarred, but proud. "No, but I'll do it anyway." On stage, the microphone crackled. Ella took a breath. "I was 13 when I was thrown onto Rekka. They called it training. It was punishment. For what? Speaking, crying, asking why my mother disappeared." Silence. Even the wind stilled. "I wasn't supposed to survive. Girls like me, fatherless, voiceless, angry. We were meant to break, and I did. But here's the thing." She looked at Rekka. "Broken things can become unbreakable." The crowd leaned in. "I don't want your pity. I don't want your applause. I want a promise that we will never again let power protect cruelty. That this town stops asking, 'Why didn't she speak up?' and starts asking, 'Why did he feel safe?'" Thunderous applause. Ella smiled through tears, her voice steady. "I'm not the girl on the wild horse anymore. I am the wild horse." Later that night, Gabriel found her alone in the barn, brushing Rekka's mane. He walked in slowly, holding something in his hand. "A deed. The land's officially yours now," he said. Ella stared at the paper. "I don't want it to be mine." Gabriel tilted his head. "Why not?" She smiled faintly. "Because it already belongs to the girls. I just take care of it." Silas walked in. "Then take care of it like it's sacred, because it is." They stood together. In silence, 3 survivors, 3 soldiers. One story, finally told. A year later, Eleanor's Grace became more than a ranch. It became a movement. Girls from across the country came to stay, to heal, to ride. It had a school, a trauma counselor, a riding arena named after Ella's mother, June's Circle. Ella refused to franchise it. Instead, she helped women in other towns build their own. They called it the Unbroken Network. Each barn with one promise: "We don't tame girls here, we free them." Final scene. Ella stood by the hilltop, the sun dipping below the horizon. A small girl, maybe 10, struggled to hold the reins of a skittish pony. Ella knelt beside her. "Scared?" she asked. The girl nodded, eyes wide. Ella whispered, "Good. That means you're about to do something powerful." The girl took a shaky breath. Mounted. The pony trotted forward, and Ella smiled. Not because the girl succeeded, but because she tried, and that was enough. That was how change began. Final line. They forced her onto a wild horse, but she didn't just ride it. She became it, and when she did, the whole damn world moved aside.